I think the Wizard in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is probably the most powerful and versatile class in the game. But it doesn't mean that they're easy to optimize. Because of their complexity, it's possible for inexperienced players to make spell selection decisions that will lead to suboptimal builds and therefore give them an inaccurate representation of the true power of the Wizard class, which can lead to players missing out on some of the more fun aspects of the class. Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I am your Innkeeper, and today we will be talking about optimizing spells for wizards in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. The purpose of this 5-part video series is for you to get a glimpse into my thought process of spell selection based on other spells and abilities of each subclass. This video series is not a specific build, nor does it give you a step-by-step instruction on what spells to choose specifically. In other words, the spells that I mentioned here or choose here are examples specific to the builds in which I am talking about within those examples. A specific spell may not be ideal in your individual character concept, so keep that in mind. And I also want to mention that this is not a power gaming guide. There's a big difference between optimization and power gaming, and even though I don't judge you if you're a power gaming, it's just not my playstyle. If you're looking for a power gaming guide, you're honestly in the wrong channel, and there's plenty of channels that'll help you do that. I'm making a lot of generalizations in this video series. Each general concept will have exceptions. So if you hear me say like force damage is a better option than poison damage, that is basically what I'm saying with that is that force damage generally is better than poison damage, but there are specific cases where that may not be the case. For example, a spell that deals poison damage and has a secondary effect may be better than a specific spell that just deals force damage with no secondary effect. So the tips I'm providing are just general guidelines. If you're between two spells and you're trying to decide, then these guidelines might help you make that decision a little bit easier. So some general advice going in, definitely some spells that you should not choose if you want to optimize your character. True Strike, which is a cantrip for wizards, horrible spell. Witch Bolt, which is a first level spell for wizards, decent at level 1 and 2, terrible afterwards. And then Tensor's Transformation, again, another spell that if you pick that, it's just a wasted spell slot. Let's go ahead and delve into part 1 of this video series, which is the cantrips. So when I'm choosing cantrips for a wizard, I think you get like 4 cantrips at level 1, something like that. Generally, I want 1 attack roll cantrip, 1 saving throw cantrip that deals damage and has a secondary effect, and a couple of utility cantrips. If I have to pick only 1 cantrip that deals damage, it's always going to be an attack roll cantrip. There are several reasons for this. Attack roll cantrips have the ability to roll critical hits. So that's something that with a saving throw, there's 0 chance of doing. You can also have tactical ways to get advantage on an attack roll, including spell attack rolls, whereas with saving throws, there are very few tactical ways to grant disadvantage on a saving throw. You also have creatures that have magic resistance that will affect saving throws. So a saving throw cantrip that deals damage, a creature with magic resistance is much more likely to take 0 from that because though they're more likely to succeed on that saving throw than an attack roll where magic resistance doesn't apply to it at all. Also, legendary resistance is a thing, especially for boss monsters, big creatures that are very difficult to combat against. If you're trying to just deal damage to them with a cantrip, an attack roll cantrip, it doesn't matter if they have legendary resistance, they can't use it against it. Not that they're going to use it against a cantrip, but that they do have that option. So a saving throw cantrip that deals damage, they have a chance to use their legendary resistance and automatically succeed, which means that you're going to deal 0 damage to them. So even though there's ways to get disadvantage on attack roll based cantrips, as a wizard you have access to Find Familiar, which is a way to mitigate that or even grant you advantage almost every time. So there's other additional ways to mitigate disadvantage. Generally, attack rolls are much easier to land than saving throws. I know that saving throw cantrips tend to have a lot of like area of effect damage instead of single target, but generally they tend to deal less damage than an attack roll cantrip. And I've also found that the range is usually pretty limited since they're cantrips. So not just that, but very few times in the entire span of my playing 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons have I ever been so surrounded as a wizard that an area of effect cantrip made the difference in helping defeat the creatures that are surrounding me. And as a primary caster, if you're using area of effect cantrips, there's a very big likelihood that you're going to hit your friends, because generally the fighter, the barbarian, the paladin are going to be right up to you to help you. So if you're trying to kill several enemies around you, you don't have the choice of not hitting your allies with area of effect cantrips, which tend to be the ones that are saving throw damage cantrips. That said, I think I've made my case, but still, I'll choose a damaging saving throw cantrip as long as it has a really good secondary effect. There's a new one in the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything book where it'll do only 1d6 damage. It's psychic damage, but it debuffs the enemy where they get a die subtracted from their next saving throw. That kind of thing is good, but keep in mind what I'm talking about here specifically of choosing a damage or an attack roll versus a saving throw cantrip. It all has to do with damage. So if your spellcaster is trying to do damage with their cantrips because they have nothing else to do during the round, then I 99% of the time will go with an attack roll versus a saving throw cantrip to deal that damage. I'm not, with all these things that I just talked about, I'm not talking about secondary effects, only about damaging cantrips. So once I've chosen my 2 damaging cantrips, 1 attack roll, 1 saving throw, I'll choose a couple of cantrips that offer like support or utility. There's a lot of good ones, so you'll have a few options. Just whatever you do, do not make all of your cantrips damaging cantrips, because what you're going to find is that, let's say you're in your mind, you're thinking, okay, well, 1 does force damage, 1 does poison damage, 1 does fire damage, and 1 does lightning damage. So I get 4 different damage types. So I chose 4 cantrips that deal damage, but they're all different damage types. You're going to find that 99% of the time, you'll only be using 1, the one that you like the most or deals the most damage. And the rest you're never going to use. It's very rare the case where you encounter a creature that's immune to the 1 damage type, and then you want to use a different damaging cantrip. And if that's the case, use your saving throw damage cantrip in that case. Because the other thing that I do when I select damaging cantrips is choose 2 different damaging types. So for example, there's Frostbite and there is Ray of Frost, and they both deal cold damage. Whatever you do, do not pick those 2 as your damaging cantrips. 1 is an attack roll, 1 is a saving throw. The thing is, they both deal cold damage. So if you encounter a creature that is resistant to cold damage, you're stuck if you pick both of those as your 2 damaging cantrips. So choose 2 different damage types and generally you'll be okay. So if you choose Poison Spray as your saving throw one, and Ray of Frost, I think that's the one that rolls attack roll, as the other one which deals cold damage, then you're fine, because if someone's resistant to cold, then you still have your poison damage from the other one. So anyways, that is something to keep in mind. Always choose different damage types, and 1 attack roll, 1 saving throw. And the saving throw one, make sure that it's one that offers a debuff or some sort of secondary effect. There's no point in choosing a saving throw damage cantrip. Toll the Dead, for example, is a good one that I like to mention to people. A lot of people like that spell because it deals 1d12 points of damage. But the bottom line is you have no chance of critting. You don't have a way to deal to get advantage using tactics. Overall, Toll the Dead, over the entire adventuring career of your character, I guarantee you're going to deal less damage than something that deals 1d10 on an attack roll. Guaranteed that you'll be doing less damage grand total over the course of your adventuring career. So keep that in mind. Anyway, so what I was saying, after I've chosen my 2 damage cantrips, I'll choose a couple of cantrips that offer some kind of support or utility. There's a ton of good ones. So what I was saying, after I've chosen my damage cantrips, choose some that offer either support or utility of some kind. Having utility ones gives you more uses for your cantrips, especially when you're not in combat. So having utility or support ones gives you a lot more to do, especially when you're not in combat. But even during combat, some of those can come in handy, like Minor Illusion is really good. And that does it for part 1 of our Wizard Spell Optimizing Guide Tune in next time. I'm going to talk about preferred damage types and condition status effects. And that's something that I think that you'll find pretty helpful. If you found this one helpful, please make sure that you click the like button. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments down below. As always, I'm your innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk with you then.